There's a building in the middle of the South Dakota Badlands that doesn't appear on any map. No address, roughly the size of a city, officially unacknowledged by 6 different branches of the United States government. And inside it sits every object humanity has ever been unable to explain. The guillotine blade that beheaded Marie Antoinette, Edgar Allan Poe's quill, Harry Houdini's wallet, Sylvia Plath's typewriter, a mirror that swallowed Lewis Carroll's Alice, a compass that vaporized a teenage boy into another dimension, a samurai sword sharp enough to split light, and a bronze sector where the most dangerous human beings in recorded history are stored alive, frozen mid-scream. It is called Warehouse 13. For 5 seasons, 2 Secret Service agents who never asked to be here will spend the rest of their lives chasing down objects that should not exist. For a woman who might be immortal, doing a job they are not allowed to tell a single living soul they have. Before this is over, the impossible warehouse at the center of all of it gets destroyed. More than once. People they love are going to die, and some of them are not going to stay dead. And the greatest mind of the 19th century is going to walk through that door, because history wrote her down as a man. This is every episode of Warehouse 13. Pete Lattimer gets gut feelings. He calls them vibes. He had one the day his firefighter father died in a house fire. He was 12 years old. He was standing in the driveway watching his dad zip into his gear, and every cell in his body was screaming that if his father walked out that door, Pete would never see him again. He didn't tell him. He didn't want to look weak. He didn't want his father to think he was afraid. His father walked out the door, drove to the fire, and never came home. Pete has carried that bill for 20 years. He stopped drinking 9 years ago. He still wakes up some nights and tells himself he could have saved his dad if he had just said one thing. Myka Bering is the opposite problem. Pattern spotter, protocol hawk, straight A student, Secret Service honors pin, speaks 4 languages, photographic memory of the regulation manual, still carrying Denver, where the operation that killed her partner Sam Martino went wrong 3 years ago. Sam went in alone. Sam died. The final report hasn't reached her yet, and she hasn't decided if she wants to know whether the book she followed was the book that killed him. They get paired on the President's Protection Detail at a Washington museum, a pre-Columbian exhibit, the Mexican ambassador's daughter in the receiving line. Professor Gordon Lattimer cuts his finger on an Aztec bloodstone in the collection, and by the night of the reception, he's dripping blood and drawing an obsidian knife on the ambassador's daughter. Pete, who got a vibe and got overruled, has already spotted the bloodstone oozing and carried it down to the basement, where he trips and drops it. A bearded man stops it with his foot and fuses a broken piece back into the statue with purple liquid. Upstairs, the professor grabs Myka with superhuman speed, and Myka spins out of the hold and takes him down herself. He screams, collapses, reverts to normal. The ambassador's daughter is fine. Pete gets suspended on drug test grounds because his story is insane. His partner gets a thank you handshake from the president. That night, a woman who looks like she stepped out of a 1952 Kodachrome appears in Pete's apartment. Not at the door, in the apartment. Didn't knock, didn't pick the lock, just walked in. Mrs. Frederick. Credentials Pete has never seen from any federal letterhead. Authorization codes so high clearance that Pete's own director at Secret Service wouldn't know they existed. She tells him to be at a set of GPS coordinates in the South Dakota Badlands tomorrow. She tells him not to tell anyone where he's going. She tells him he will be there indefinitely. His partner gets the same visit in her own kitchen an hour later. Different room. Same speech. They meet at a warehouse the size of a small regional airport surrounded by open prairie. A rugby ball drops out of the sky and almost decapitates Pete in the dirt. The bearded man from Washington opens the door. Secret Service agent Dr. Arthur Nielsen. Everyone calls him Artie. He walks them through a corridor he calls the umbilicus, past containment fields, past warning signs, past a photograph on the wall of a group of people, decades old, with Mrs. Frederick in it looking exactly the same as she did in Pete's apartment yesterday. Everyone else in that photo, Artie mentions, has disappeared, died, or gone insane. Inside the main chamber is a cathedral the size of a football stadium, full of crates, airships, a wooden U-boat, a guillotine blade, a display case with 7 harpoons labeled as whale extracting, an entire airplane that went missing in the Bermuda Triangle, and thousands of shelves disappearing into darkness on a mezzanine level too high to count. Artie calls it America's Attic. Every single thing the United States government has ever acquired and could not explain is in here, and Pete and Myka are now warehouse agents for the rest of their natural lives. She immediately tries to call her boss, Daniel Dickinson, at Secret Service headquarters to get transferred back to Washington. Her cell doesn't work. She walks up a small hill to find signal and gets through for 40 seconds before the line breaks up. Artie arrives with milk and cookies and informs her the hill she is standing on is cow manure. The first case trains them. A college kid named Cody Thomas in Iowa went berserk at his girlfriend while chanting in a language he doesn't speak. Artie hands them a list of questions. A Tesla stun gun invented by Nikola Tesla that wipes short-term memory, a jar of purple neutralizing fluid, and a video communicator called the Farnsworth, invented by Philo Farnsworth himself. He tells them to go find the artifact. The artifact is a jeweled comb, built by an alchemist, that transmits Lucrezia Borgia herself into whoever wears it. The wearer is Cody's godmother Lorna, a lawyer who has been quietly in love with Cody since his parents died on a plane crash when he was 12. The comb amplifies obsession. The comb compels its wielder to murder anyone who stands between her and the thing she loves. At a Renaissance-themed party, Lorna hypnotizes the entire crowd with firelight reflected off the comb and tries to make Cody throw his real girlfriend Emily into a bonfire. On the drive to the party, Lorna starts mumbling Latin and grabs the wheel, and the car goes off the road. Myka comes to inside a hallucination, a hospital bed, her dead partner Sam calling her Bunny and telling her to get up. She wakes on the roadside, drags an unconscious Pete out of the wreck, and they make the party anyway. Pete stuns Lorna with the Tesla, Myka cold cocks her, and Pete throws Myka the comb straight into the neutralizer canister. Back in DC, Dickinson calls and tells her he fought and got her a recall. She can walk out right now and go back to the White House detail. She has 5 seconds. She hangs up without picking. Across town in the same building, Mrs. Frederick is standing next to Dickinson, counting the seconds down with him. Myka chose. She doesn't know why yet. Pete goes to the warehouse with his long bomb football that Artie warns him not to throw, because a throw from the inside launches it a mile up and nobody knows when it comes down. Pete throws it anyway. Nobody stops him. A song is hypnotizing people in Chicago banks. Composer Eric Marsden wrote it. His daughter is using it to buy her father's own catalog, back from a label that cut him loose the second he got sick. Marsden is catatonic in a hospital bed. The song is the last place his voice still lives. Pete and Myka catch the daughter. Pete sides with her. They take the artifact. They leave the money. Belsky, the FBI agent, can catch her own bank robbers. Meanwhile, someone is hacking the warehouse computer. Artie thinks it's his old boss. He breaks into Daniel Dickinson's office, photographs him two-dimensional with a camera that flattens humans, and accuses him of hacking the warehouse computer. Dickinson says no, the hacker is somewhere else. Artie doesn't believe him, and a jolt of static runs through his skull, and he has a flashback. A darkened room, a man screaming to make it stop. The hacker will keep hacking. A church in Unionville, Colorado. A nun who thinks she can fly. A grandmother smashing her husband's ashes through a hospital window. A teenage boy smashing his own violin. An EMT who keeps grabbing Myka's breasts and apologizing between grabs. They've all sat in the same chair. A 19th century hypnotherapy chair whose springs magnetized over a century and combined with the current priest's voice and DNA to make people act on their deepest suppressed urges. Myka punches Pete twice, once for a joke, once for being right. Back at the warehouse, Artie's containment field keeps browning out. The hacker is using the surges to triangulate the warehouse's location. On the wall, electricity spells out 2 words, knock knock. The hacker is 19 years old. She is 5'2". She has been breaking into the warehouse's mainframe for 2 months on consumer-grade hardware out of a rented apartment. Her name is Claudia Donovan. She kidnaps Artie out of the warehouse with a set of handcuffs, drags him to a derelict physics lab in the middle of nowhere, and cuffs him to a copper pipe. The lab is the one where it happened. Her older brother Joshua was a graduate student at the same university 12 years ago when their parents died in a car crash. Joshua raised Claudia from the age of 7. Joshua was brilliant. Joshua was also convinced that a 16th century mapmaker named Rheticus had built a working matter teleportation compass, and he decided he could recreate the experiment. The real compass came to Joshua through his physics professor. Remember that because the name attached to that professor detonates in episode 12. Artie knew about the experiment and let it happen. The experiment went wrong. Joshua vanished in a flash of light. The compass went with him. The lab caught fire. Nobody ever recovered a body. The government told the Donovan extended family that Joshua had died in the blast. Artie believed it. Artie walked away from Claudia and never looked back. Claudia never believed any of it. She kept seeing her brother in mirrors. She kept hearing him in her head. She told everyone she knew and nobody believed her. 6 months ago, she checked herself into a psychiatric hospital where they kept telling her she was delusional. 2 months ago, she checked herself out and started hacking. Her landlady, Mrs. Richmond, confirms every date for Pete and Myka. She was looking for Arthur Nielsen. She was going to make him look her in the face. Turns out she wasn't delusional. Joshua was stuck in a dimension halfway between this one and nothing. He was only partially here. He was slowly draining the energy of anyone near him, including Claudia, to keep himself from fully dissolving. Claudia had a nosebleed in the lab. Claudia was dying in real time. Claudia has already remade the experiment herself. What she doesn't have is the compass, so Artie substitutes Ben Franklin's lightning rod from his emergency kit and boosts the power. Pete and Myka dig through the Reticus artifacts and find hidden panels carrying inscriptions. The compass had its own. Joshua never found them, and that's why the experiment ate him. They reach the lab in time to hand over that missing fact. Artie grabs Claudia, steps into the field, and all three vanish in a burst of light. Joshua hasn't aged a day in 12 years. The compass inscription shows the way home, and seconds later they reappear, alive. Mrs. Frederick shows up afterward at the warehouse office and tells Artie what he already knows, which is that Claudia has seen too much to be allowed to walk away. Artie says she won't hurt them. Mrs. Frederick says other people in the Regent chain of command may not agree, and Artie knows what happens to civilians who learn about this place. Artie stares at her and doesn't answer. Claudia leaves the bed and breakfast. Claudia comes back in episode 5. She won enough at a Vegas blackjack table to pay her own rent for a year. She also got bored in about 6 days. Artie hands her a chessboard with a game he's been losing against himself for 3 months. She solves it in 2 moves and takes his office. She is not officially a warehouse agent. She is not officially anything. She is also not leaving. 4 sculptures based on the Lenape creation myth: earth, wind, fire, water. Put together in the right order at dawn, they map the location of a sacred cave in Manhattan. Inside the cave are 4 artifacts: the stone of unlimited strength, the water of eternal life, an arrow that commands the wind, and the flame of the sun. A construction magnate named Radburn figures it out, digs through bedrock, puts on a cloak that lets him walk through walls, and starts collecting. Radburn reaches for the fire. Pete stabs him with the arrow. Radburn goes up in a column of flame that punches into the stratosphere. He doesn't come back. A body in a sealed chamber under a St. Louis police station, mummified, handcuffed to a pipe, holding a Secret Service ID that crumbles when Pete touches it. His name was Jack Secord. He was a warehouse agent. 50 years ago, he was hunting something called the Spine of the Saracen, a Crusade-era parasite that bonds to its host's back, amplifies rage, and kills whoever the host hates most. He caught it. He sealed himself in a basement rather than let it loose on the city. His fiancée, Rebecca St. Clair, left the warehouse the same night, changed her name, and disappeared into a quiet life for 50 years. A gas explosion breaks the seal. The Spine bonds to a local cop. The cop kills 3 people. The Spine jumps to Pete. The only way to kill the Spine is to overload the host with enough current to fry them both. Myka can't pull the switch. Rebecca can. Pete lives. The Spine dies. They bring Rebecca back to the warehouse so she can see the room they kept for Jack. His effects, his engagement ring for her. 50 years of waiting still packed in a drawer. Rebecca takes the ring and hands Myka a warning on the way out. "Leave now," she tells her. "The warehouse is like the Spine. It uses you up." Myka stays. A samurai sword so perfectly forged that its blade splits the light around it and makes its wielder invisible. The sword is a gift from the Japanese government to the President of the United States, being displayed at the embassy. It disappears inside the embassy in a flash of white light. 2 American Secret Service agents, Pete and Myka, are in the hallway when it happens. They get knocked unconscious. They don't see the thief. Artie arrives, follows the grenade trail to Kluger Electronics, and finds its maker reduced to dust beside the remains of a roll of antacid. He recognizes the brand. He says one name: James McPherson, his former partner, his oldest friend, the man he worked with at the warehouse for 9 years before he turned, before he took an artifact out of the collection without authorization, before he killed 5 firefighters trying to save a woman they both loved, before he was convicted of 5 consecutive murders and faked his own death in prison and vanished. Mrs. Frederick and the regents pardoned half of his crimes and classified the rest. The world thinks the rogue agent is dead. He has been selling warehouse artifacts on the black market for 15 years, while everyone at Warehouse 13 lives in a building he knows every corner of. At the embassy, a Japanese security officer named Ogawa produces a file identifying Artie as a convicted espionage agent. Here's the ugly part. The file is real. In his 20s, Artie was an NSA cryptographer who sold secrets to the Russians, got caught, and vanished. Mrs. Frederick buried the record and handed him a new name, because Arthur Nielsen is not the name he was born with. Somebody dug it all back up. Artie breaks into Dickinson's safe to grab the sword's missing hilt piece, gets caught, gets arrested for treason, and tells Pete and Myka flat out that the charges are true. Mrs. Frederick's bodyguard arrives with release papers, and she finally names who unearthed the file. Artie visits a woman named Carol Augustine, the woman both he and McPherson loved. Carol swears she hasn't seen James in 15 years. She defends him anyway. James was the one who believed in life, and she walks off past Artie's warning that harboring him puts her in danger. McPherson kills Ogawa in a private hangar at Dulles Airport by decapitating him invisibly with the sword. Pete and Myka arrive. He stabs Artie in the side with the sword and has to flee without it, because Artie hangs on to the blade. Here's the strange part. The sharpest sword in existence should slide out of a man like butter. It doesn't. He escapes by rolling an implosion grenade into the hangar that almost sucks all three of them back into it through the vacuum. They survive. Barely. Lena pulls Pete and Myka aside at the bed and breakfast afterward and tells them that something bad happened between Artie and his old partner 15 years ago. Worse than what any of the files say, and she wasn't there, but she can read the shape of it in Artie's aura. She tells them Artie has been waiting for this phone call for 15 years. She tells them it's going to get worse. Myka touches Lewis Carroll's looking glass during a warehouse argument and gets pulled in. Alice Little, the real one, has been trapped inside that mirror for over a century, sealed in right after a string of murders, and the agents who filed the report admitted they had no clue how it happened. The two swap on the spot before anyone leaves for Vegas. So the Myka, who works the Vegas case beside Pete, chasing a poker chip that shows the future, is Alice. Pete figures it out when she kisses him, because his real partner would sooner drink battery acid. Alice Tesla's the con man they came for and shoots Pete, then walks out believing she killed them both. Both survive. She drives herself to the warehouse to smash the mirror, and the team bounces her into the Studio 54 disco ball's reflection and shoves her back into the glass. Myka comes home. The mirror gets covered. Alice is still in there, watching. An envelope from the Secret Service lands at the bed and breakfast. The final Denver report. Myka doesn't open it. Then, Florida. Prisoners in a maximum security prison are killing themselves one by one after visits from ghosts of the people they hurt. The prison was built from quartz out of the mines beneath it, one giant tuning fork, and an incoming tropical storm is cranking it tenfold. The guards start hallucinating. The warden barricades herself in her office. Pete sees his dead father. Myka sees Sam Martino. Sam tells her it was her fault. Sam tells her she killed him. She almost shoots Pete thinking he's Sam. She pulls the gun. She sees Pete's face underneath. She lowers it. She tells Sam she's sorry he made the wrong call in Denver. She tells him she loved him. She tells him she has to let him go. The fix is an old photo. The last warden kept a second quartz cross on the wall, and matching quartz cancels the frequency of the first. They hang it back up and the ghosts evaporate. Back home, Myka drops the unopened Denver report in the fireplace. She doesn't need a document to tell her what she already knows. The neutralizer processing center under the warehouse jams. 30 minutes from meltdown. Claudia, Pete, and Myka spend it running through aisles being chased by a self-multiplying dodgeball, trapped in a tesseract inside Lena's bed and breakfast, and frozen inside the dark vault by Sylvia Plath's typewriter. About that bed and breakfast. The one in the warehouse is the original house, moved inside whole, because an artifact fused to it could not be moved out. The one they all sleep in every night is the rebuild. Meanwhile, Artie is sitting in a diner across from Mrs. Frederick and an entire room of people who turn out to be the regents. The waitress is a regent. The guy reading a newspaper is a regent. They are putting Artie on trial for everything he has done since Claudia walked in. They are afraid of McPherson. They want to know if Artie is afraid enough. Artie tells them to fire him or trust him and walks out. They keep him. Myka's father, Warren, collapses in his Colorado Springs bookstore with Edgar Allan Poe's Lost Notebook leaking ink into his skin. She flies home. Pete is already there because Pete is Pete. The notebook and Poe's quill pen are two halves of one artifact, and separated, they panic. The ink crawling across Warren's skin is the notebook's own lettering, leaving the page for a living host. The missing pen is in Portland, Oregon, in the hands of a bullied high school kid. Pete and Claudia find the kid. They get the pen back. She stays at her father's side, reading his unfinished novel to him, because it is the only thing on earth he loves more than being disappointed in his daughter. He comes back. He tells her he's proud of her. He tells her he knows she does something brave for a living, even if she can't tell him what. He tells her he should have said this earlier. And then McPherson walks into the bookstore while Pete and Myka are outside, holds her parents at bay with Jack the Ripper's lantern, and takes the notebook and the pen away from them both. He smiles and tells her to ask Artie what this is really about. On the drive back, she realizes the entire case was a distraction. The rogue agent wanted them out of the warehouse. He got it. 15 years ago, Artie and McPherson were partners, warehouse agents, friends, and both of them were in love with the same woman, Carol Augustine. A house fire, Carol inside, Artie standing outside with a medallion called the Phoenix in his pocket, an artifact that walks its bearer through flame untouched. He wouldn't use it. Every artifact has a price, and the Phoenix pays for the life it spares with other people's lives. If Carol walked out, someone else wouldn't. McPherson accused the regents of hoarding objects that could save the world, and when Artie turned to walk away, McPherson stunned him with a Tesla, took the medallion, walked into the fire, and walked out carrying Carol. 5 firefighters died for it. 5 consecutive life sentences. He escaped by faking his own death in a prison accident. Carol married him, and 15 years of exile turned him into something Artie doesn't recognize. In the present day, McPherson is selling stolen warehouse artifacts to the highest bidders in the international collector community. He demos the goods at Freytag Tool and Die, a Washington factory owned by an old collaborator. The auction itself runs out of a separate underground storage area stacked wall to wall with Warehouse 13 crates. A dozen artifacts have walked off the warehouse shelves without one alarm tripping, and when Mrs. Frederick pulls the access logs, they name the last person who touched them, Claudia. He is also framing Artie for the thefts using Harriet Tubman's thimble, an artifact that lets its wearer assume any human face. Pete, Myka, and Artie pin him down inside the auction. He responds by shoving an eggshell bomb, a pinch of promethium wrapped in thin shell that will explode with the force of a tactical nuke if the shell cracks, into Artie's mouth and clamping his jaw shut around it. He tells the others to put their weapons down, but Pete is still carrying shards of the sonic goblet, the sample McPherson handed Freytag as a sweetener, the one Pete shattered when Freytag turned it on them. He throws a shard to the floor. The burst stuns McPherson. Artie spits out the eggshell. Myka catches it, gently, before it hits the floor. They bring the rogue agent back to the warehouse in handcuffs. Artie takes him to the bronze sector, a gallery Pete and Myka didn't know existed. Rows and rows of bronzed human figures, frozen in solid metal but fully conscious, preserved for eternity by a process invented in the 1500s. The worst people in human history are in this room. All of them are alive. None of them can move, speak, or die. Mrs. Frederick fits him with a necklace of palladium-laced diamonds that will keep his blood from turning acidic from the warehouse's painite walls. Artie looks at his former partner for the last time. He tells him goodbye. McPherson tells Artie he isn't begging for his own life. He is begging for Artie's, because Artie is next. Artie activates the bronzer. The older man freezes in solid bronze. Then Claudia walks into the bronze sector alone, reverses the process, and McPherson steps out of the bronze alive and unharmed. He thanks her, tells her to wave at the security camera for Artie's benefit later, and plucks Harriet Tubman's thimble off her finger. It isn't Claudia, it's Lena, the bed and breakfast owner, the woman who reads auras, freeing the worst man she knows. Why is a question with an answer, and the answer waits at the top of Season 2. What matters tonight is that the security feed says Claudia did it, and the real Claudia has no alibi anyone will believe. McPherson has Lena activate the viruses he planted in Artie's computer. Warehouse security shuts down floor by floor. He runs for the exit. Artie chases him down the umbilicus in the dark. McPherson reaches the outside. He flips a hidden switch. The umbilicus self-destructs. A wall of flame sweeps through the corridor with Artie inside it. Pete and Myka are safe inside the main floor. They run to the outer door. They open it. Where the umbilicus used to be, there is now nothing. No hallway, no Artie, no way out. They are sealed in. Mrs. Frederick is unaccounted for. Everything Pete and Myka have built over 12 episodes, every rule Artie taught them, every artifact they put on a shelf, every relationship they thought was real, is on the wrong side of a wall of fire. Roll credits. Pete and Myka dig through the umbilicus ash looking for Artie's body. She wants to kill McPherson with her bare hands. Pete is quieter. He also wants to kill the rogue agent. They find Artie's glasses first. Then they find Artie, not a body, reforming out of smoke in the middle of the corridor, coughing, holding a gold medallion in his fist, the Phoenix. McPherson slipped it into Artie's coat pocket on the way out the door. Every artifact demands a price. Someone, somewhere, is going to die because this thing saved Artie. That someone is Mrs. Frederick's personal bodyguard, driving her to the warehouse. He starts choking up smoke behind the wheel. The car slams into the side of the warehouse and detonates. They find Mrs. Frederick lying near the wreck, barely alive. Lena, up on a ridge overlooking the warehouse with McPherson, is not done. She slips into the bronze sector through an emergency tunnel that only a regent or a caretaker would know about, and debronzes a second prisoner, not a man. A woman in a long Victorian coat, black hair, sharp cheekbones, a fountain pen in her hand. She steps out of the bronze breathing heavily, and McPherson welcomes her like an old friend. Her name is H.G. Wells, as in the time machine, as in the War of the Worlds, as in the writer. Except H.G. Wells was a woman, Helena. Her brother Charles put his initials on her manuscripts because 19th century London was not going to publish a female science fiction novelist. She apprenticed at Warehouse 12 under a man named Cataranga in the 1890s. She invented most of what Warehouse 12 ever had. And then her daughter Christina was murdered in Paris in 1899, and Helena hunted down the men responsible and killed them slowly, and kept going. And the regents finally bronzed her at her own request, because she did not want to live in a world Christina wasn't in. She was conscious inside the bronze the entire time. She is very motivated. The team spends the hour realizing McPherson pulled Helena out to help him rob the Escher Vault, the most secure room in the building, which contains the personal effects of every bronzed prisoner. Myka, Pete, Helena, and the rogue agent all end up in the warehouse interior at the same time. He gets caught. He gets cuffed. He offers to trade the whole plan for his freedom, and nobody is buying. Then Helena appears, slices the crystal necklace off his throat, and vanishes into the aisles. His blood reacts with the painite in the walls. Dying, McPherson admits he planted the phoenix on Artie so his old friend would survive and see the darkness beyond death. Artie tells him what he actually saw: light, filled with hope. McPherson, with seconds left, admits he was wrong and disintegrates to black powder in his partner's arms. Helena escapes with 3 of her own personal effects from the Escher Vault that nobody knew were missing: a compact, a locket, a ring. The locket holds a photograph of her daughter. Back at the bed and breakfast, Mrs. Frederick looks into Lena's eyes, chokes her unconscious, and a small white pearl drops out of her ear. The Pearl of Wisdom. McPherson planted it over a month ago and used it to run her like a puppet. And here's the cruelty of it. Freed of the pearl, Lena remembers all of it. Freeing McPherson, framing Claudia with the thimble, every step in her own 2 hands. And far away in a coffee shop, H.G. Wells turns her locket over in her fingers and goes back to a set of schematics. Something, she tells a stranger, that she's been thinking about for a very long time. Claudia becomes the team's official hacker, not an agent, not yet. Artie hands her Philo Farnsworth's personal Farnsworth, the one the inventor kept for himself, because Claudia is the first person in 50 years who's earned it. She hugs him. He flinches away so hard it's nearly audible. He also doesn't take the Farnsworth back. A masked vigilante in a purple suit starts dropping criminals in Detroit. Pete identifies him instantly because Pete reads comics. The Iron Shadow, unpowered urban crusader from the Silver Age. A local diner waitress is his Lois Lane, and she doesn't know yet that the quiet, laid-off auto worker who loves her has strapped on a pair of old workout trunks from a yard sale and is flying around the city at night breaking arms. The artifact starts eating him. Everyone blames Jack Kirby's belt until the real culprit stands up: Angelo Siciliano's workout trunks. He nearly collapses the city into a gravitational singularity. Myka suits up in a kinetic absorption suit and siphons the charge. Pete pulls the trunks off, and Myka releases the energy into the sky like a lightning rod in reverse. Meanwhile, Artie keeps seeing McPherson in mirrors. Not a ghost, not a hallucination, an echo. The 2 of them were both resurrected by the Phoenix at different points. The medallion linked them. Artie finds a pocket watch his old partner left him, and a note that says he'll be seeing him. Artie puts it away and pretends he's fine. Cowboys, gladiators, and Marines start glitching into downtown Univille in flashes of light. The town hates the warehouse agents because the warehouse tanked the local economy. The postmistress of Univille has stolen a 1944 Philo Farnsworth projector that turns broadcast images into solid matter, and she's streaming a Raymond Street James movie marathon. When the final act of the Doomsday movie hits, the Doomsday Bomb is going to actually go off and actually blow up the actual town. They jam the signal. final. Raymond St. James's 10th movie ends with a close-up of Artie's face. Meanwhile, Mrs. Frederick, Regent Valda, and a specialist dig through Lena's mind to scrub out what McPherson left behind. Mrs. Frederick wipes the residue and declares her cured. Then she notices the U-shape Lena keeps sketching over and over and wonders how cured that really is. Models are collapsing into 100-year-old women mid-runway. It's Man Ray's camera, operated by a freelance paparazzo who has been stealing the youth of beautiful women since the 1930s and selling it to elderly rich clients. Myka goes undercover as a model. She becomes the next target. She nearly dies. Artie double exposes the photographer himself on the camera at the end and watches 80 years of stolen life land on him in 10 seconds. Claudia tries to date Todd from the hardware store. It goes badly because Claudia can't explain her actual job. Global Dynamics sends over a skinny, nervous IT technician named Douglas Fargo to upgrade the warehouse computer. He accidentally boots up a sentient AI named Hugo 1, which turns out to be part of the mind of a former warehouse computer technician named Hugo Miller, who transferred a piece of himself into the machine and retired to a sanitarium with what was left. The part of Hugo that loves games made it into the computer. The part that always cheated didn't. Hugo 1 reviews the team's personnel files, concludes they are the problem, and locks them in the warehouse while pumping the air down to polar temperatures. Pete and Myka visit Hugo at the sanitarium, where he lifts Pete's Tesla, drops them both, and escapes on his own. They find him watching a merry-go-round and bring him back. They rejoin his brain halves. Hugo wakes up older but whole. Claudia and Fargo kiss after carving up killer maintenance robots with an improvised lightsaber, and she immediately tells him she's choosing Todd. Then Todd tells her he can't see her anymore. Everyone is bad at love in this episode. Pete touches a telegraph in a museum of British history and goes quietly around the bend. He hallucinates Mrs. Frederick handing him a secret assignment, a mole hunt inside the warehouse, and lands on Regent Benedict Valda as his suspect. An old flame named Kate Logan makes out with him at a diner and gets shot by a sniper. None of it is real. Kate is fine, and the diner video shows Pete alone in a booth, passionately kissing air. His own team stages an intervention because they think he's drinking again. Myka and Artie corner him in a junkyard, where Artie improvises a sonic ray gun, bouncing Oye Como Va off a car windshield into Pete's skull. He comes back to himself. He apologizes to everyone, Valda included. He is also a little proud that his kissing technique still works on thin air. A college wrestling team at Tamalpais University in California is suddenly unbeatable, setting records nobody has come close to in 20 years. Also, the winners keep dying. One burst into flame on the mat. One spontaneously combusted in bed. The coroner says spontaneous combustion. Pete is grounded at the warehouse for 3 weeks after the Telegraph episode. Myka gets Claudia as her backup. It's Claudia's first real field assignment as a partner, not a research hacker. They go to break into the coach's office after hours and find somebody already inside. A tall woman in a coat with an English accent, elbow deep in the coach's trophy case. Helena G. Wells. Myka crosses the room in 3 strides, holds her at gunpoint, then grabs her by the throat and chokes her until Claudia talks her into loosening her grip. Claudia has never seen Myka do anything like that. The young hacker doesn't know what to do with her hands. Helena does not fight back. Helena takes the choking and then tells her about her daughter, Christina, murdered in Paris in 1899. Helena found the men who did it, and what she did to them in return redefined the art of slow death. And when the last of them was gone, she found no peace, no closure, no anything, just the rest of her life with a daughter-shaped hole in it. She built the time machine to go back and save Christina. Her machine sends consciousness back, not bodies. She made exactly one jaunt, Paris 1899, and history refused to move. Christina still died, so Helena asked the regents to bronze her, hoping to wake up in a better world. She woke up in a world that had moved on without her, and she is trying to matter in it. Myka lets her go. She tells her to sit down. They solve the case together. The artifact is a Viking sacrificial ladle embedded in an experimental energy drink formula at a bottling plant owned by one of the team's alumni. The drink grants superhuman strength. The drink also dissolves its user from the inside. Claudia falls into a vat of it and nearly explodes in a bathtub of ice while Helena whips up an amino acid treatment on the spot. Claudia lives. Myka quietly tells her thank you. Helena slips away before the cleanup team arrives, leaving Myka her grappling gun as a loan, and Myka locks it in a case at the warehouse for safekeeping. Meanwhile, back in Univille, Pete has finally worked up the nerve to ask out Kelly, the town's veterinarian. He has been annoying her for a month. She has been saying no. She says no twice more. She says yes on the third try, with a very specific warning that she is recovering from an ugly divorce, and she is not going to fall for him, and she does not want complicated. Pete, who does not listen when he is in a good mood, says great, sure, totally, no complications. Pete and Myka touch a pair of Robert Louis Stevenson bookends and swap bodies mid-case. Pete, in Myka's body, nearly hooks up with a hot guy at Myka's high school reunion. Myka, in Pete's body, nearly hooks up with Kelly. They track down the thief who originally used the bookends to switch identities with a security guard mid-heist. Bodies morph back and forth in a bathtub until the heads of the statues click back correctly. Nobody talks about the kiss Pete had in Myka's body. They really do not talk about it. Someone kills Daniel Dickinson with a chain from Torquemada's rack. Then they use Titanic deck planks to freeze a colleague of Artie's. The killer printed a file off Dickinson's computer, a list of Artie's relatives, and the prisoners he got released. From the days when Artie was trading artifacts to the Soviets to get political prisoners out, the days the regents rewrote to protect him. The killer is Ivan, son of Artie's old handler Alexander, who rotted in a Soviet prison after the pipeline collapsed. Ivan has been waiting decades. He chains Artie up in Moscow. Helena finds him first, and Ivan turns the Titanic plank on her, leaving her minutes from freezing solid. Pete and Myka pop the locked door with Artie's reflex hammer. Helena shoots Artie free. Artie decks Ivan and thaws Helena back on the plank, and Pete Teslas Ivan mid-lunge. The Regents chairman, Mr. Kosan, reinstates Helena as a full warehouse agent over Artie's loud objections. Artie refuses to shake her hand. He tells Myka he should have let her freeze. Meanwhile, Claudia finally figures out why Todd keeps disappearing. He's in witness protection. He kisses her goodbye and gets relocated to somewhere that is probably named something like Idaho. She does not get to know. Rebecca St. Clair, who we last saw walking out of the warehouse in Season 1 holding Jack Secord's engagement ring, comes back to the bed and breakfast with one last favor. A man named Jonah Raitt just died of natural causes at 82, and his obituary cracked open the one case she and Jack never closed. She's also carrying a secret Artie will find later in a bottle of cancer medication. 50 years, one regret. August 1961, Green Bay, Wisconsin. She and Jack, young agents, were hunting a killer who turned women into glass statues. 4 women dead, every arrow pointing at Raitt, editor of Where and When magazine. The killer got away, and Rebecca blacked out for 22 hours and 19 minutes mid-investigation with no memory of what she did or why. She wants the artifact found. She wants the file closed before the file closes her. Helena, currently serving as a reinstated warehouse agent under heavy regent supervision, recognizes the time span immediately. 22 hours and 19 minutes is the exact duration of a single consciousness transfer cycle on her time machine. Someone in 1961 used Helena's machine to ride Rebecca's mind for a day. Artie wants nothing to do with the plan, so the team runs it behind his back. Pete and Myka ride the chairs counterclockwise and wake up in August 1961 wearing Jack and Rebecca's skin in a warehouse office full of cigarettes, martinis, and a boss named Charlie Martin, who is basically their Artie in a different decade. Back in the present, Claudia hotwires the warehouse power grid to feed the machine, and Rebecca fakes a medical moment whenever the real Artie drifts too close to noticing. They try to catch the killer. The killer turns out to be not the editor of a magazine named Jonah Raitt, as the 1961 Rebecca suspected, but his wife Meredith, who has been methodically killing his young female colleagues to keep him. The 2 women fight for the blade, and Meredith gets impaled in the struggle. As she turns to glass, she laments that Jonah didn't love her more. He wishes she might have loved him less. Then a power outage sends Artie to the grid, and his micropulse fries the machine's wiring with the agent still parked in 1961. He surfaces with the wrong end of the stick and a Tesla pointed at Helena. Rebecca forces him to let Helena attempt the save. One caveat: if Pete and Myka die, Helena follows. When it's done, Rebecca asks Helena for one more ride. A few minutes only, no way back. Helena warns her she can't return her. Rebecca asks why on earth she'd want to come back. So Rebecca of the present passes away, while Rebecca Myka of 1961 wakes in a cherry orchard, young again, back in her own skin, and kisses Jack Secord herself. That kiss is where Jack and Rebecca's actual relationship began. It was always going to be there. Myka and Artie, in the present, make peace after a season of cold silence. Some cases you only close when you stop trying to change them. Some people you only get to love once and then carry for 50 years, and that has to be enough. 3 American college students die in a bazaar in Alexandria, desiccated to husks in seconds. Mrs. Frederick collapses in the warehouse, screaming ancient Egyptian. Warehouse 2 has woken up, buried under Egyptian sand for 2,000 years. Its consciousness is trying to connect to the current caretaker. It is killing her. Pete, Myka, Helena, and Valda go into the ruin and solve 3 trials: mind, body, soul. Valda dies on the body trial by choice, slipping off a rope line so the rest can pass. They reach the center. They shut the orb down with an Ankh. Helena turns a Tesla on Pete and Myka and leaves them to die in the sand. Back at the warehouse, while Claudia is being groomed as the next caretaker in case Mrs. Frederick doesn't make it, the team realizes Helena funded the entire student expedition. She found Warehouse 2's location decades before she was bronzed. She woke up and went back to finish the job. The job is not saving her daughter. The job is worse. Helena walked out of Warehouse 2 with a spear, part of the Minoan trident, lifted the moment she laid Pete and Myka unconscious. But the set isn't complete, and the missing piece isn't in Egypt, it's in Paris. Pete and Myka get out of Warehouse 2 on Daedalus's wings, across sand filling the chamber like an hourglass, climb to a hatch, and Artie blows it open from the surface. Then they chase Helena to Paris, to Christina's grave, where a lawyer is sinking into primordial tar. They pull him out and realize what she came for. She took the handle of her daughter's coffin. Look at the shape. The U-shape Lena has been sketching since the pearl came out is this handle, with a piece of the trident hidden inside. That was McPherson's whole game. He had Helena de Bronze to lead him to Warehouse 2 and the rest of the trident, and she killed him before he could spill it. She funded the expedition that woke Warehouse 2. She has been lying to them since the day they forgave her. Her target is the Yellowstone caldera. The trident, driven into the right geothermal vent, triggers the supervolcano and a new ice age. She has decided the human race is not worth saving. Her daughter died and nobody helped. Her grief, after a century in bronze, has taken the shape of a planet. Kelly gets a package at the clinic with Pete's name on the label, a compact mirror stamped L-Abe, her favorite breed. She texts Pete a photo. He thinks nothing of it, until Helena herself calls and suggests he check on the lovely gift he sent Kelly. The compact is Lizzie Borden's. When Kelly looks into it, Kelly will want to kill. Pete breaks off and races to the clinic. Myka and Artie drive to Yellowstone. Claudia goes after Pete. They find Kelly standing over an unconscious Pete because he got there first and she drugged him, with an axe in her hand and the compact pressed to her face. Claudia grabs the compact out of Kelly's grip, drops it into a neutralizer bag, and the spell breaks. Kelly drops the axe. Kelly screams. Kelly realizes what she was about to do. Kelly looks at Pete on the floor, and she cannot unsee it. At Yellowstone, Artie shoots Helena in the arm, and the Corsican vest she's wearing hands Artie the same gunshot wound. 2 people bleeding from 1 bullet. Helena drives the trident into the ground. Geysers bloom out of the earth. The ground steams. Myka walks across the meadow, unarmed. She puts the pistol into Helena's hand and the barrel against her own forehead. She tells Helena that she knows her. She tells her that what she has lost is real, and the world is terrible, and the grief doesn't end. She also tells her that if she is going to kill 8 billion people, she has to start with Myka, because Myka is one of those 8 billion, and Myka is right here, and Myka is her friend. Helena stares at her. Her hand shakes. For 40 seconds, nobody knows if the gun is going to go off. She lowers the weapon. Myka pulls the trident out of the ground. The geysers close. Yellowstone goes quiet. The regents arrive and take Helena back into custody. The Janus coin comes off the shelf. Her mind is split off her body and filed away somewhere classified. Kelly, the next morning, shows up at the bed and breakfast with her suitcase in her car. She tells Pete she can't. She tells Pete his life is full of insanity, and she never wanted complicated. And complicated turned out to mean axes. She tells Pete she's sorry. She tells Pete she is not the one for him. She drives away. Pete watches the taillights until they turn off the highway. Myka writes a 1-page resignation letter addressed to Artie. She hands it to Mrs. Frederick in the parlor. She says that she trusted Helena, and Helena almost ended the world, and that is her fault. She says she is not equipped to carry that. She says she is resigning. The caretaker reads the letter aloud to the room. She lets her go. Myka drives off the property. Pete runs after her. He gets to the curb in time to see her taillights at the end of the driveway. He waves. She does not see him. She turns onto the highway and disappears. A Christmas episode. Pete and Myka come in through the snow, Pete grumbling about winter, Myka loving every flake of it, and get handed a sketch of the intruder stalking Los Angeles mall tycoon Larry Newley. The sketch is Santa Claus. The artifact is an old family ornament made from shell casings out of the World War I Christmas ceasefire, charged by his daughter Callie's wish for the dad who used to play Santa. The Santa thing wants Larry to be a better father and is fully prepared to erase him. Callie breaks it herself. She runs straight through its giant nutcracker soldiers, refuses to let her father go, and Larry, fading away on a Santa throne, decides money means nothing if he's not in her life. Meanwhile, Claudia sneaks Artie's estranged father Isidore into the bed and breakfast by telling him Artie is dying. Artie is not dying. Artie plays piano for his father for the first time in 30 years. Izzy still can't help himself from kibitzing the fingering. Some things don't change. Lena brings out the turkey. Myka tells Pete she's sorry he couldn't be home with his family for the holiday, and he says he's exactly where the loved ones are. Everybody sits down and eats together. Myka quit. She stays quit. The warehouse has a hole in it where she used to be, and Pete is doing a terrible job of hiding how much that hole hurts. Mrs. Frederick fills it with Steve Jinks, former ATF agent, Buddhist, human lie detector. He can tell when someone is lying just by looking at them. He meets the team by getting knocked out by Artie's Tesla during a case involving Jimi Hendrix's guitar shooting lightning bolts out of a building. Mrs. Frederick offers him the warehouse the same way she offered Pete. He says yes. Pete hates him immediately. Pete's jokes do not land on Steve. Steve does not do jokes. Pete tells the worst possible jokes, and Steve stares at him like he's looking at a stain. A Denver case pulls the team into Shakespeare's Lost Folio. Touch a cursed page, and you die the way the character on it died. Snakebite, 23 stab wounds, suffocation. Then the page bursts into flame. Mid-case, Pete and Steve walk into the Bering and Sons bookstore in Colorado Springs. Myka is behind the counter wearing glasses. She helps anyway because she can't help helping. At the end of the case, Mrs. Frederick visits her with a holographic Helena Wells suspended in a glowing ball. Helena, serving a prison sentence in a limbo dimension while her body stays somewhere the regents won't say, tells her that hate curdles into fear if it sits too long, that both of them know this, that she is allowed to come back. She comes back. Welcome to Warehouse 13 Season 3. A new player also gets introduced in the final seconds of the episode, a man in shadow. No name, not yet. An FBI agent named Sally Stukowski suffocating a witness with a plastic bag in a Denver hotel. Someone is coming for the warehouse. They've been patient about it. Claudia and Steve take a real first case together to buy Typhoid Mary's knife at a Boston auction. Claudia is the senior agent on paper. Steve mocks her for this. They lose the knife to a father trying to save his dying son from leukemia by transferring the disease to strangers. Meanwhile, Pete and Myka are in Seattle on a different case. People forgetting how they fly planes. A bifurcated artifact split between a tie clip and cufflinks belonging to gossip columnist Walter Winchell. Pete forgets who he is mid-case. She sits beside him while he remembers his father dying. She tracks the cufflinks. She gets his memory back. The regents officially reinstate Myka. Everyone's home, sort of. A computer virus is turning people's internal organs into clay. Hugo Miller is back to help write the antivirus. Vanessa Calder, the warehouse doctor, is called in. Artie is in love with her and has been in love with her for years and is convinced she belongs to Hugo. The clay is one plot. A golem amulet around a hacker's neck interacted with the computer virus he wrote, and now the virus turns bodies to clay. Neutralize the amulet, run Hugo's antivirus, everyone unclays. The other plot is why Pete and Myka wake up in Artie's bed at the start of the episode with Artie's toothbrush, Myka's hair dyed blonde, and Steve missing. W.C. Fields' juggling balls fell off a shelf during target practice and got Pete and Myka blind drunk. They drunk bronze Steve on purpose, hiding Nixon's shoes in the bronzing chamber and daring him to fetch them. The night he came out to them as gay. Vanessa kisses Artie at the end and tells him he owes her dinner. Everything is fine. Meanwhile, Stukowski collects Tyler Struhl, the stalker programmer whose amulet made the clay. He's the carrier, not a casualty, and her employer wants to meet him. Pete's ex-wife Amanda shows up at the bed and breakfast getting remarried the next day. She came to pick up her grandfather's ring. She accidentally triggers the hive of a bee pheromone artifact belonging to the Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut. At the wedding, her whole bridal party and groomsmen start worshipping her as a queen, and try to mummify the groom to sacrifice to her. Pete and Myka save the wedding. Amanda marries the tool. Pete lets her go. Meanwhile, Steve and Claudia recover Grant's flask at a Civil War reenactment. Steve finally tells Claudia his sister died young. Claudia would have been her friend. Steve knows this without needing to be told. Joshua's trumpet, an ancient ram's horn that disintegrates everything in its path. Someone has been tuning it since 1893. The regents release Helena out of her limbo in holographic form to help the team solve the case because she was the one who originally lost the trumpet. The case jumps between 1893 London, 1962 Ohio, and the present Pittsburgh. Helena's former partner Vincent was a traitor. Jack and Rebecca found the trumpet in 1962 and almost destroyed it. A 10-year-old boy named Daniel stowed away in their trunk, took the trumpet home, and grew up to be a radio astronomer at SETI, who has spent his adult life trying to aim the trumpet at the star where he believes aliens took his father. Helena apologizes to Daniel in person, holographically. She explains her daughter. She explains the difference between grief aimed in the right direction and grief aimed at the sky. Daniel puts the trumpet down. Myka is the only one on the team who lets Helena stay active a little longer than necessary. Fargo, the Global Dynamics IT tech who broke the warehouse last season, is trapped in his own virtual reality video game with a friend named Jerry. The artifact is Beatrix Potter's tea set. Pete and Claudia dive into the game in avatar form to rescue them. Pete plays a barbarian. Claudia gets accidentally rendered as an elf. They fight a demon named Hannah, which is actually Jerry's terror of his ex-girlfriend Hannah, who dumped him last week because he never proposed. Out in the real world, he proposes to the real Hannah. Meanwhile, Stokowski hands Artie and Steve a case in New York involving a stolen Van Gogh. She makes them complicit in a heist. Then she takes the painting herself. The Van Gogh has mechanical nanite bugs hidden inside it. The bugs crawl out into the warehouse and start uploading everything. The warehouse has been breached. Nobody knows it yet. Myka sees Leo Bach, the man who shot her partner Sam Martino 3 years ago, in Denver. She chases him. He vanishes into an alley with no exits. An artifact is helping him. The USS Eldridge Barometer from the 1940s Philadelphia experiment lets whoever holds it pause time for 47 seconds at a time. Leo has a partner. The partner sets Sam up. The partner is Jim, her old Secret Service colleague. He kept her from being Sam's backup on the Denver ops so Sam would go in alone. Sam died because she wasn't there. She did not cause it. Jim did. She pushes Jim into a bullet frozen in midair. Jim dies in his own time pause. Pete lets her do it alone because it was her case to solve. Meanwhile, Claudia and Steve get tranquilizer darted on a doorknob case while petting a friendly dog. They scrape the getaway car's license plate out of that dog's memory with a mind-reading fez set that could fry Artie's brain if the dog's fez slips off mid-rad, plus Pavlov's bell, which leaves Claudia drooling uncontrollably for 24 hours. The plate traces to Sally Stokowski. Sally Stokowski is the assassin. She has been killing regents one by one using artifacts bought from a man the team hasn't met yet. 4 regents dead. A 5th, Theodora Stanton, missing. The team catches her in a hotel bar in Atlanta. She has the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory doorknob that torches its victims from within. They take it off her. They bring her back to a booth. Mrs. Frederick arrives in person. She sits across from Sally. She produces from her purse a small round Japanese medal, Shiro Ishii's Unit 731 medal, an artifact from the commander of the Imperial Japanese Army's biological warfare program. It simulates drowning in the mind of anyone touching it. The caretaker places the medal on Sally's palm. Sally's lungs fill. For 3 seconds, she lets her drown in place. Steve, who has been standing behind the booth, draws his service weapon. He tells the caretaker to stop. He says the agency does not torture people no matter what they did. She says the agency does whatever it has to do to protect the warehouse. Sally, choking, breaks free in the argument and runs. Marcus Diamond kills Sally in a van 20 minutes later with a single injection. The wheelchair-bound man who ordered it accepts that the agent was expendable. She always was. At a high-rise office tower 3 blocks away at that same moment, a quiet transfer is happening. The warehouse's final defensive artifact, the Ramati Shackle, is being passed from regent to regent for safekeeping. Adwin Kosan, Philip Petrov, and a woman Pete has never seen before. The head of security is a man named Jackson. On the roof, an assassin Pete and Artie identify later as James Aquino, a demolitions expert, spray paints an anarchy symbol using Berlin Wall spray paint, an artifact from the night the wall came down, imbued with the collective desire to tear down every wall on Earth. Berlin Wall paint dissolves walls. Anything marked with the symbol falls apart from the top down. The corrosion spreads. Pete and Claudia chase the bomber. Artie arrives on the 40th floor and moves Kosan, Petrov, and the unknown regent toward the stairs. Except the corrosion is eating the stairwells out of the lower floors, cutting off every route down. Jackson, the security head, grabs a rail when the steps dissolve under his feet. Myka tries to haul him up. He tells her to save Philip. He lets go. Philip doesn't make it either. Corrosive debris comes down on him, and he spends his last conscious moments passing the Ramadi shackle to Jane, telling her she is the guardian now, before the corrosion dissolves him. Out on the street, Pete and Claudia corner the demolitions expert in a dead end. The bomber tells them either they'll kill him or another man will. He turns the Berlin wall spray on himself, dies rather than be captured. Artie, who rode a window washing rig down with the wounded Kosan, is on the street in person, pointing at the burning symbol on the side of the building. Pete paints a counter-anarchy symbol over the corrosion. It stops spreading. The building holds. The team regroups on the sidewalk. The artifact ladder Artie built dissolved before the last two could use it, so Jane and Myka climb down the elevator shaft instead, and Myka walks the last regent out at street level. She walks over to Pete and introduces her. "Pete," she says, "this is Jane. Jane is the regent who is holding the Ramadi shackle." Pete looks at the regent. Pete looks at his mother, Jane Lattimer. Pete's mom, who he thought was a retired elementary school teacher, who never once let on that she was a regent of the most classified organization in the United States government, who Mrs. Frederick personally recruited back into warehouse service the week of his father's funeral, a death that had nothing to do with artifacts, who raised Pete to be an agent without ever once realizing she was doing it. Pete does not speak for a full minute. Jane smiles at him apologetically. Pete walks away. Mrs. Frederick fires Steve for drawing a gun on her. She strips his credentials. He drives back to the bed and breakfast and packs a bag. Claudia watches him go from the window. Steve does not look back, or so it appears. Pete is not happy that his mother is a regent. He and Jane touch a pair of bronzed baby shoes and dive into their shared memory on the day of Pete's father's funeral. Pete at 12, crying. Jane being recruited by Mrs. Frederick. Jane going to visit a young boy named Walter Sykes, out at batting practice in a baseball cap, wearing a rope bracelet called Collodi's bracelet. No wheelchair in sight. The bracelet gives him strength, lets him walk, and slowly hardens his heart. Young Artie and young McPherson take the bracelet. Walter goes back to his wheelchair. He grows up to be an anarchist billionaire running a holding company called A to Z Technology. A for Aztecs, his childhood baseball team. Sykes has been hunting his bracelet back ever since. He is the man in shadow. He has been killing regents with artifacts, with Marcus Diamond as his muscle. Marcus can't die because Sykes keeps him alive with Johann Malzol's metronome, ticking in a wooden case Marcus carries. Meanwhile, Myka and Claudia get a separate case about a girl who thinks she's spontaneously combusting people. She isn't. Her high school stalker is doing it with binoculars from the pilot of the Enola Gay. Claudia talks her down in a cemetery. The girl lives. Zombies in Ithaca, caused by a Donner Party mason jar in a taco truck. The frozen flesh eating the brain of anyone who eats a taco, bought with a tip that touched the jar. Routine. The real episode is that Marcus Diamond walks into a bar and buys disgraced ex-warehouse agent Steve Jinks a drink. Sykes wants Steve on his team. Steve lets Marcus pull up a stool. Meanwhile, at the warehouse, a fortune-telling machine tells Claudia she is going to die tonight. Lena pulls her out of a vat of sentient brandy and tells her the machine says that to everyone. The nanites that Sally Stokowski smuggled into the warehouse in the Van Gogh painting 5 episodes ago have finally finished their work. Tyler Struhl, Sykes' pet programmer, decrypts the data. The file is labeled Atlas 66. It is redacted Regent level. It contains the location of a specific object the team has been quietly lied to about for almost a year. When Helena was bronzed again at the end of Season 2, she wasn't bronzed, she was split. The Regents used a Janus coin, a bifurcating artifact that separates mind and body, on her. Her memories were filed away in a vault. Her body was given a new identity. She has been living as a high school English teacher named Emily Lake in a Cheyenne, Wyoming suburb. She has a cat named Dickens. She does not know she is Helena G. Wells. Emily Lake thinks she has always been Emily Lake. Adwin Kosin and the Regents made this call. Jane lays it out for a furious Myka. They tried to give Helena a normal life while keeping her as a resource, and Atlas 66 was never a safe house code. Helena, born 1866, raised at Atlas House. The file is her. The hologram of Helena the team has been consulting all season is made from the coin. Sykes wants her because the ancient Regent Sanctum, a buried Warehouse 7-era chamber in Hong Kong, is locked by a chess puzzle that only Kataranga's apprentice can solve. The chessmaster only had one apprentice worth the name. Pete and Myka drive to Cheyenne High School. She walks into Emily's 11th grade English class mid-lecture, sees Helena at the blackboard teaching Hemingway, and nearly falls over. Pete pulls a gun. Emily faints. Pete feels terrible. They take Emily home. Her apartment has a cat. The cat sits on her lap like it knows. She pulls a kitchen knife on them at one point, and Pete disarms her without even trying. Myka watches a woman she has grieved for a year live a stranger's life. Then Marcus Diamond shows up. Pete fights him, watches him drop off a 5th-floor balcony dead, then watches him stroll back in alive. Down in the parking garage, Steve is waiting with Myka's own Tesla. Steve, who everyone thinks was fired in Atlanta and bought by Sykes with a drink and a promise. He stuns Pete and Myka and leaves with Emily and Marcus. Pete and Myka wake up and chase him. The team races to the Value Mart in South Dakota, where a regent named Mr. Keeler runs the grocery store that contains a hidden vault and a walk-in freezer full of frozen peas. They retrieve the Janus coin. They bring up Helena's memory version on the holosphere. Pete wants to smash the coin so the collector can't use her. Myka refuses. They ask the memory version. Helena votes to be destroyed. She tells Myka to do it. She tells her that her existence in this form is already a life sentence. She tells Claudia she regrets not seeing her destiny, but knows it will be glorious. She tells Myka to be brave. Claudia, crying, shuts the hologram off. Pete raises the coin to smash it on a rock. Marcus and Steve step out of the trees, and the riding crop freezes Pete where he stands. Claudia grabs the coin and runs. Steve chases her down alone. Gun out. She refuses to hand it over. She dares him to shoot her. Back through the trees, Pete hears gunshots. Steve walks back holding the coin because Claudia gave it to him. He is undercover. Jane Lattimer, Pete's mother, planted him inside Sykes' operation the day Mrs. Frederick fired him. The bar meeting with Marcus was theater. The firing was theater. He had to sell it so hard that he couldn't tell any of the people who loved him, because if any of them had reacted normally to seeing him, Sykes would have known. Claudia heard him out between gunshots and believed him. He gives them an address instead. Skybrook 3, a decommissioned airport hangar. Sykes plans to wipe out the warehouse and everyone in it, and Steve has to go back in. He fires one more shot into the dirt to sell it and runs. The coin reaches Sykes, who presses it into Emily Lake's palm, and Helena G. Wells floods back into her own body. Pete, Myka, and Claudia drive to the hangar. They break in. It's empty. Pete smells something upstairs. Claudia runs ahead. She finds Steve, dead. Not staged, not theater, dead. Sykes killed him after he handed off the coordinates. Marcus dumped the body. Claudia, who has spent the last month trying to pretend Steve wasn't becoming her best friend, sits down next to the body and doesn't say anything for a long time. The team buries Steve. Claudia won't stop looking at the flash drive they found in Steve's pocket, a cigarette lighter that Steve, who did not smoke, would only have been carrying as a dead drop. She plugs it in. Steve's face fills the screen. He tells them he doesn't know what the collector's endgame is. He tells them the buyer is flying to Hong Kong with Helena. He tells them Marcus is afraid of a wooden box he carries. He tells them to keep fighting, and he tells Claudia specifically to keep the faith. The video ends. Jane Lattimer walks in and tells them the final piece. Steve has bought them the location of the ancient Regent Sanctum, a Warehouse 7-era chamber sealed since 1890 under a restaurant in Tai Po, Hong Kong. A chamber behind a door locked by a chess puzzle, a puzzle designed by Helena's mentor, Kataranga, a puzzle only his apprentice could ever solve. Pete and Myka fly to Hong Kong, while Claudia stays stateside watching the feeds. The two of them descend into a basement behind a door that swings open when they press on the Eye of Horus inscribed in the wall. The chamber beyond is a stone room with a chessboard in the middle and a guillotine blade suspended over a chair at the board's side. Sykes is there. Helena is there, puppeted by the riding crop. Tyler Struhl, the collector's programmer, is strapped into the chair making chess moves under her coaching. Tyler loses. The blade descends. His skull is split open in front of them. Sykes has the riding crop force Helena to capture them at gunpoint. Myka is strapped into the bloody chair. 3 wrong moves and the blade drops again. Helena already lost Tyler to the King's Gambit, so she tries the dragon variant. 2 wrong moves. 1 more, and Myka dies. Helena, staring at the board, remembers her mentor in 1893, teaching her that sometimes the rules of the warehouse are not the point. Sometimes you change the rules. She tells Myka to make an illegal move with her pawn, to take the king directly, to break the rule of chess. Myka does it. The lock accepts. The board slides open. A stone arch lights up behind them. The arch is a portal connecting the sanctum in Hong Kong directly to the main floor of Warehouse 13 in South Dakota. an evacuation route the ancient regents built into the architecture in case of a catastrophic breach, and the Ramadi barrier going up around the warehouse is what unlocked it. Sykes uses the riding crop to make Pete step through the arch with him. Pete is forced to shut the portal down from the other side, trapping Myka and Helena in Hong Kong. Inside the warehouse, the Collector forces Pete to take his own mother captive and fetch Collodi's bracelet. Jane tells Sykes she failed him. She offers to help him. He refuses. He wants her to feel loss the way he felt loss. He puts the bracelet on and stands up out of the wheelchair, legs working, power running through him, and uses the riding crop to make Pete put his own gun to his head. At the bed and breakfast, Marcus Diamond has arrived to kill Lena, wooden box in hand. She cracks him with a pitcher and runs. He catches her. Mrs. Frederick appears with Shiro Ishii's medal and a promise of unending pain, and when Marcus pulls a knife anyway, Claudia gets there first. She opens the box, stops the metronome inside with her thumb, and Marcus rots in seconds. Claudia says the one thing she has been saving. That was for Steve. Helena and Myka reactivate the Sanctum portal and come through. Helena shoots the riding crop out of Sykes' hand with a Tesla. Pete drops the gun, Sykes bolts, and Helena and Myka both end up snared in the Mary Celeste rigging until Artie cuts them free with neutralizer. Jane drops Sykes with one punch and escapes through the portal into the Sanctum. Sykes shakes off Pete's tackle and lunges after her. Pete shuts the portal down. Sykes, caught between closing dimensions, disintegrates in midair. The Collodi bracelet is left sitting in Jane's hand. Artie stares at the empty wheelchair. He walks to it. He tears the seat open. Inside is an artifact the size of a brick, a piece of masonry from the London House of Commons, charred black, that absorbed the full tonnage of hate the Nazi Luftwaffe threw at the British capital in 1940. A piece of stone that was almost a city's death sentence, a bomb. It has a countdown attached, 56 seconds left. The Ramadi shackle barrier is up around the warehouse, raised from the shackle on Jane's wrist when Marcus fired Black Bart's cannon at the building. It will contain the blast. It will also trap the blast inside. The warehouse is about to become a sealed container full of an artifact bomb powered by the distilled hatred of an empire. Pete tries a blowtorch on the masonry. Nothing. Mrs. Frederick yells at them to get out. There is no getting out. The umbilicus is closed. The exits are closed. The shield is up. Helena walks up to Artie and puts her hand on his arm. She tells him she found an anomaly in the shield system and can reroute part of the containment barrier to a localized dome. She can shield 3 people. That's it. She has to do it manually. She has to do it from outside the dome. She looks at Myka. She smiles. 19th century Helena, who lost her daughter and bought 2 pieces of eternity in bronze. She says she smells apples. Kataranga taught her that apples mean the warehouse likes you. She puts both hands on the barrier and shapes a smaller dome around Pete, Myka, and Artie. Outside the dome, she smiles at Myka one more time. The bomb detonates. An orange-white sphere of hate and fire rolls outward from the wheelchair and consumes everything. Every artifact, every aisle, every shelf, every bronze prisoner. 100 years of collection, reduced in one instant to glass and ash. Outside the dome, Helena evaporates. Out at the bed and breakfast, the shockwave rolls through, and Mrs. Frederick buckles. Her skin turns gray. She whispers once. Her eyes close. Her body withers to almost nothing because she is the warehouse's caretaker, and the warehouse is dead. Artie stands in the smoking wreck of the main floor with Pete and Myka alive inside a shrinking dome. Claudia is on the phone from the bed and breakfast, voice shaking, telling them Marcus is dead and Mrs. Frederick is gone. Artie pulls McPherson's pocket watch out of his vest, the one McPherson willed to him in Season 2. The one Artie has never mentioned to anyone. He holds it up to the ash. He says the one thing he has never said out loud in the entire series. We haven't lost yet. A Christmas episode that operates as an It's a Wonderful Life alternate reality story and does not really acknowledge the warehouse just burned down. Pete touches an upholstery brush that belonged to the inventor of the original Wonderful Life story. It sends him to the reality where Pete was never born. In that reality, McPherson is still alive and running Warehouse 13 as a corrupt black market dealer. Myka's father died 3 years ago. Claudia is locked in a psychiatric ward. Pete has no aura at all when Lena reads him. Artie sits in prison for a fake assassination attempt until Mrs. Frederick springs him. She stays free until McPherson bronzes her mid-episode with DeMille's riding crop. Pete spends the episode trying to convince each of them who he is. He succeeds. Together, they break into the alternate warehouse and corner McPherson at the furnace, where he's dumping Christmas artifacts into the molten pit. Alternate Artie grabs the brush and tosses it to Pete a heartbeat before McPherson murders him. Pete leaps the furnace, catches the brush midair, and lands back home in the real world. He hugs everyone in sight, then discovers the pay-per-view fight has been preempted for It's a Wonderful Life. It is a soft episode. It lets the audience breathe before they have to deal with the fact that when they come back for season 4, the warehouse is still a smoking hole in the ground and Mrs. Frederick is still dead. They aren't dead, they're about to undie. Artie pulls McPherson's pocket watch out of the ash. Not a fix. A map. Black diamonds behind the back panel. A Portuguese inscription that says, "Push the button." A 24-hour countdown when he pushes it. The trail leads to Magellan's astrolabe, a brass instrument that erases the last 24 hours. The whole world resets, and nobody knows it happened. Only the user carries the memory of the day that got undone. The astrolabe itself sits in a cellar in France, guarded by the Brotherhood of the Black Diamond, a fanatical Templar sect, and its alidade is stashed in the Vatican catacombs. The team flies in. Claudia grabs the astrolabe and gets trapped behind an iron gate for her trouble. In Rome, Pete gets stabbed to death by brother Adrian. Artie uses the astrolabe. Time rewinds to the moment before the bomb went off inside the warehouse. Artie now knows Pete is about to push Sykes through the portal, that the bomb is in his wheelchair, that his own hatred is what fuels the bomb. Artie redirects. Pete pulls the collector back through the portal. Artie throws Gandhi's dhoti over his face. The dhoti neutralizes Collodi's bracelet's seed of darkness. The buyer, the broken boy he used to be, apologizes with his last breath and dies. The bomb never goes off. The warehouse stands. Mrs. Frederick lives. Helena lives. Lena lives. Brother Adrian told Artie before he bled out that using the astrolabe creates an undying evil that will live with the user forever. Artie notices one strand of his hair has turned gray. Then he falls asleep and dreams that Claudia stabs him to death with a dagger. Claudia has been sneaking into a morgue with Johann Melzel's metronome. She is going to bring Steve back. Jane shows up, claims the regent signed off, and walks Claudia through the ritual. They never signed off. Jane disobeyed orders because they owed Steve. It works. Steve comes back to life. He is now linked to the metronome. If the metronome ever stops, Steve dies. The regents put him under permanent observation in case the link has a dark side nobody can see yet. Steve is alive again. Steve is also a ward of the state now. Meanwhile, Pete and Myka catch a guy in Philadelphia, using H.P. Lovecraft's key to make the people he hates appear as tentacled Cthulhu monsters to everyone around them, so they get beaten to death by their own neighbors. A grieving fiancé, avenging the woman he was about to marry, trampled during a sports riot. Brother Adrian shows up at the bed and breakfast and introduces himself to Artie. He is the undying evil. Adrian wants the astrolabe undone. Adrian will dismantle Artie's life's work piece by piece until Artie caves. Sykes had stolen a crate of warehouse artifacts before he died. Marcus Diamond hid them in a safe house in Devil's Lake before Claudia killed him. A petty thief named Jesse Ashton breaks in, tries to pawn them, and accidentally unleashes 6 artifacts across the town. A windmill pipe that controls weather, invisibility sunglasses, Catherine O'Leary's cowbell that started the Great Chicago Fire, Napoleon's violin that causes riots, Bobby Jones's golf clubs that cause rage, a bird cage that turns birds homicidal. Jesse uses the pipe to rob a bank because his younger brother needs a heart transplant and no donor matches. His blood type is too rare. By the end, Jesse kills himself with a final lightning bolt because he is the match. His heart saves his brother. Meanwhile, Artie keeps seeing Claudia with the dagger. He is afraid to tell anyone. He begins calling someone secretly to help him track the dagger down. Adrian hears about it. Prep school students using Bobby Fischer's marbles to study, going slowly insane. Hugo Miller's nephew is one of them. Pete and Claudia save the school. Meanwhile, Myka and Steve are in New Orleans tracking a jazz trumpeter using a cigarette case to suck the pain out of a therapist's patients. The downside is, the trumpeter dies of their pain. The trumpeter had decided to die at 27 like his heroes. The bartender he loved talked him out of it. Brother Adrian meets Artie at the diner and confirms what Artie didn't want to confirm. Adrian isn't letting go. He's dismantling Artie's life until Artie uses the astrolabe to undo his use of the astrolabe, which would roll time back and kill Mrs. Frederick, Helena, and Lena all over again. Artie cannot do it. Artie finds a black diamond on the warehouse shelf where Bobby Fischer's marbles used to sit. The real marbles, the ones in evidence, were a delivery Adrian mailed him. Adrian has been inside the warehouse. Adrian has been inside the warehouse for weeks. A veteran hockey player in Toronto is setting records because a lonely fan is using her dead grandfather's Baton Death March dog tags to heal his injuries with the power of love. The dog tags work on people you love. The fan loves him too much. Meanwhile, Mrs. Frederick takes Claudia aside in Minneapolis and shows her the birth of a brand new artifact in a shop robbery, where a woman steps in front of a bullet to save a baby, and her charm bracelet briefly sparkles. Mrs. Frederick tells Claudia that every artifact is an object plus a person plus a moment of extremity. She then takes Claudia to a retirement home and shows her a dying old man. Mrs. Frederick says he is her grandson. She is so old, her son is long dead. Not all wonder is endless. This is the episode where Mrs. Frederick begins grooming Claudia to replace her. Artie and Steve track more stolen artifacts to a storage locker. All the artifacts Artie personally recovered in his career. Adrian is specifically ripping out the pieces of Artie. Alice gets loose. She was in Lewis Carroll's mirror, which Adrian shattered. A shard reached a thrift store. A churchgoer clicked a camera flash. Alice jumped bodies. Alice is specifically hunting Dr. Vanessa Calder, Artie's girlfriend, because Adrian hired her. Alice jumps from body to body across town, leaving a trail of chaos. Claudia herself gets briefly possessed by Alice at the end and swings a mirror shard at Artie. It never lands. Steve jumps in front and takes the blade in the gut, which drops Claudia too, because she feels every inch of it through the metronome link. Steve grabs the shard and puts Alice back in the mirror himself. Artie breaks up with Vanessa to keep her safe. Vanessa tells him when he comes to his senses to call her. Lena, meanwhile, has quietly read Artie's aura. Something is very wrong with Artie. She does not know what yet. A heartburn medication is making people grow like human giraffes because a cooking instructor at a school called Le Cordon Bend used a bowl made from the Colossus of Rhodes to season his students' meals. A pharmaceutical company executive named Deb Stanley stumbles into the case, starts digging too hard, sleeps with Pete, and the regents decide rather than killing her, they will promote her. She's offered a regent in training slot. Meanwhile, Adrian steals Harriet Tubman's thimble off a warehouse shelf, leaving a black diamond in its place. Artie, Claudia, and Steve trace him to a manor outside Sturgis, where the threshold of Limontinus lets him walk through walls, and the thimble lets him wear Artie's face in the cellar. At the end of the episode, Helena, whom the regents quietly reinstated to help Artie, confronts him. She has figured out what he did. She has told Mrs. Frederick. They all know. He now has a team of women telling him he needs help, and he still cannot tell Pete, Myka, or Claudia why. Steve and Claudia discover the metronome's key. Steve's mother forgave the man who killed his sister Olivia. Steve still hasn't. His inability to forgive is what's keeping him tied to the metronome. When Claudia accidentally touches the metronome and starts choking Steve's mother, Steve shatters the metronome on the fireplace to save her. Pure love act. Steve is free. Steve is alive without the link. Meanwhile, Pete and Myka catch a Marine veteran in West Virginia with Peloponnesian shrapnel embedded next to his heart from Iraq. It gives him the strength of 300 Spartans in one arm. Also, it rusts his left arm's victims from within. Myka injects neutralizer directly into his chest wall. He lives. Mrs. Frederick and Helena quietly take the astrolabe out of the dark vault and hide it somewhere only Helena knows. Adrian's final move. He targets Pete's ex-wife Amanda with a tattoo from a Russian bomber that will cause radiation poisoning. He targets Myka's pregnant sister Tracy with a wrapping paper ribbon that turns the wearer into a murderer. He targets Claudia's brother Joshua by encasing him alive in amber. Pete saves Amanda by letting the tattoo transfer onto him, then laying on the artifact box. Myka saves Tracy by finding the artifact ribbon in the gift wrap. Claudia thaws Joshua out of the amber. Mrs. Frederick and Steve fly to Rome and find every member of the Brotherhood of the Black Diamond painted into a Rembrandt of a church interior. They have been there for 4 months. The real Adrian is among them. Artie has been talking to the air for weeks. The astrolabe split his soul in half. The evil Adrian he has been seeing is a hallucination projected from inside Artie's own mind. Artie's own consciousness has been manipulating him toward the dagger, toward the artifacts, toward the plan his dark half has for the warehouse. Lena, who walked in right as Artie was talking to empty air in the bronze sector, realizes what is happening. Evil Artie turns around and sees her. The final shot of the episode is her Farnsworth ringing over and over while she lies dead on the warehouse floor. Evil Artie is loose. He shot the bed and breakfast owner and ran. He has 3 goals: find the astrolabe Mrs. Frederick and Helena hid, steal the Chinese orchid, warehouse 8's deadliest holding, and unleash the sweating sickness on the planet so the team will be forced to give him the astrolabe to save humanity. The team chases him across Europe. Mrs. Frederick cannot give up the astrolabe because giving it up means letting everyone die, all over again. Pete and Myka chase him to Prague for a ritual dagger. Evil Artie has Judge Isaac Parker's noose and hangs everyone in the museum from the ceiling. He calls Myka a self-deluded, prissy mental superior who will die alone. He calls Pete a child forever looking for a replacement father. He takes the dagger. They catch up to him in Germany at the family mill where the Steinbrücks have been guarding the orchid since 1939. Evil Artie says the words "I cast you out" and shatters the orchid's container with the dagger. The shockwave knocks the dagger loose. Claudia picks it up. Then Artie plucks a blossom from the orchid and tosses it into the air. Claudia understands what the real Artie, buried somewhere in there, is asking her to do. She stabs him in the heart and gives the words back. "I cast you out." Pete catches the blossom, and it doesn't matter. The blossom is no cure. It explodes in his hand into a swarm of black particles that goes up everyone's nose, then sweeps the planet. Every person on Earth has 24 hours to live. Artie is comatose. The dagger split his soul. Evil Artie is gone. Real Artie is hiding in a coma inside the bed and breakfast of his own mind, playing the piano forever while the darkness closes in. Claudia and Steve hold his hand and use Sigmund Freud's clock to dive into his subconscious. Steve gets knocked out of the trance, tackling a phantom McPherson, so only Claudia reaches the piano. Lena is there, sitting with Artie, asking why he did it. Claudia has to shove him through a door to wake him up. Artie wakes up crushed with the memory that she is dead, and he killed her. Meanwhile, Pete and Myka, 16 hours from first plague mortality, hunt down the Count of Saint-Germain, an 18th century con man who is still alive, still hiding, still lying. His name in the present is Bennett Sutton. He is immortal. The ring they need to restore the Chinese orchid, made from half the Philosopher's Stone, sits on a stone hand sealed inside his fake tomb in the Paris catacombs, where his wife's servant is buried in his place. He leads them down, and he dies taking a poisoned dart for Myka. They restore the orchid. The plague reverses across the world. Artie retreats into guilt. Mrs. Frederick tells him he is not responsible for what the astrolabe did, and that he can fix himself if he wants to. Back in the Paris catacombs, Charlotte Dupré, a French collector, arrives at the empty tomb and realizes Saint-Germain's body is missing. She is his wife. She is also immortal. Also, she is someone's mother. The regents declare Artie not responsible for Lena's murder. He asks to be punished anyway. They tell him he will have to live with what happened, and that living with it is more punishment than anything they could devise. He isolates. He starts trying to use her list to maintain the shelved artifacts she used to tend. Meanwhile, Pete and Claudia investigate a park ranger named Ethan burying people alive with a lantern. It's a revenge case against the environmental terrorist group that got his brother arrested. Claudia connects with a woman who had to turn in her own lover to the law. She realizes she had to stab Artie for the same reason. She can stand by him now rather than walk away. At the end, Artie opens a flash drive with Lena's acceptance speech when she joined the warehouse. She says she is willing to risk her life to make the world safer. He freezes the frame and apologizes to her. Pete and Myka overload a jade elephant statue in the aisles. A book explodes, and the blank pages of an unfinished 1940s crime noir novel swallow them whole. Author Anthony Bishop wrote himself into his own book in grief over his dead wife, and has been hiding there ever since. They play private detective and secretary in black and white Chicago. The jade elephant pulled in with them. Bishop's fictional murderer is a femme fatale named Rebecca Carson. They have to finish the book to get out. Bishop's love for a fictional singer named Lily is the only thing keeping him there. They write him into an ending where he and Lily run off together. Meanwhile, Artie, Claudia, and Steve chase a car thief named Amy in South Dakota using Corey Lofton's stuntman gloves to drive through walls. Artie plays chicken with her in a car. Amy flinches first. Claudia and Steve notice Artie is still not fine. Steve reports this quietly to Regent Adwin Kosan. Pete and Myka hunt a Vegas magician whose illusions float his audience volunteers up into the stratosphere the next day. The magic was never his. His granddaughter Rose wears Cupertino's medallion around her neck and does the levitating herself, her own body included, while Monty takes the bow. Meanwhile, Mrs. Frederick installs a new person at the bed and breakfast. Her name is Abigail Cho. She runs the B&B now that Lena is gone. She is also a trained psychologist the regent sent to fix Artie. He figures this out in 5 minutes and throws her out. By the end of the episode, he goes to her room and says the thing he has not said out loud. "I killed someone I loved." She invites him to come talk. A woman named Charlotte Dupré watches the warehouse from a mile away and tells someone on the phone she thinks she's found what she's looking for. Helena is back. not as an agent, as Emily Lake again, but voluntarily. She picked the identity back up after handing the astrolabe back to the Brotherhood. She works in forensics in Wisconsin, and she's dating a widower named Nate with a little girl named Adelaide. She has a home, a life, a family. A dirty detective is using a hyena jawbone to scare criminals into devolving into cavemen and confessing. His partner, the district attorney, used it to kill a murderer himself and calls it protecting the community. The detective grabs Adelaide. Helena has to pull her Tesla out for the first time in months. Myka tells her that Adelaide is not a replacement for Christina. Helena tells her to get out of her house. She saves Adelaide. She does not want to lose her. Myka tells her to fight for the life. Nate learns what Helena really is. He considers for a long moment. He stays. A prison break in Arkansas, where an escaped convict has a copper jug from Italy that produces lava. He's running the lava at a bank vault. Marshal Liam Napier turns up to help with the case. He is Steve's ex-boyfriend, the one Steve left for the warehouse without saying goodbye. Pete and Myka work the case around them. Steve and Liam finally have the breakup conversation they never had. Liam figures out Steve works for a secret organization. Steve admits he can't make it work with anyone because he's a human lie detector. Liam tells him he knows. Meanwhile, Artie has a Beethoven symphony stuck inside his skull because a ball bounced off a broken clock. It's making him deaf. Claudia chases down the missing clock piece and saves him. Claudia's 21st birthday is that night, and Artie has secretly hired Cherie Curry of the Runaways to sing Cherry Bomb with her at the bar because Artie saved Cherie's life in 1979. A Stepford-gated community in Ohio where a nosy neighbor named Janice is using salt from Sodom and Gomorrah baked into cookies to punish her fellow Homeowners Association board members for their secret sins. A retired colonel who gassed a village in Kuwait. A security guard who torched his own house for insurance. Pete eats the cookies. Pete gets sucked out of a window. The only way to survive is to confess the sin you're hiding. Pete confesses the drunk driving accident where he nearly killed his friend. The thing he never told anyone. The thing that made him quit drinking for good. His wounds heal. Meanwhile, Artie and Claudia find a homeless teenage math savant named Nick, who's being used by a hedge fund manager to do impossible quantitative trading via Orville Wright's aviator goggles. The procedure is destroying Nick's brain. They save him. Claudia invites him home to stay at the bed and breakfast with them. Also, Myka's doctor calls her. The doctor uses the word cancer. The doctor is specifically talking about her ovaries. Steve stays home with Abigail cleaning neutralizer gunk out of warehouse vents. Abigail, without trying, gets him to open up about being lonely. She tells him he already has 4 people. His family. Dinner at the bed and breakfast that night is hot and home-cooked and everyone is there. Upstairs in the hallway, Nick sends a text to a woman named Charlotte Dupre. They believe me, I'm in. Charlotte Dupre is Nick's mother. Nick has been 15 years old for 500 years. He is Bennett Sutton's son. Sutton is his father. Paracelsus is his uncle. They are all immortal, and Charlotte wants the alchemist out of the bronze sector, so he will undo what he did. Myka tries to tell Pete about her cancer and can't. Every time she opens her mouth, she imagines him freaking out and she shuts down. Artie, Pete, and Myka are in upstate New York, tracking a cache of Warehouse 12 artifacts stolen by the pirate Roaring Dan. Charlotte is the dealer selling them the missing piece of the puzzle box. They team up because Artie decides it is better to keep her close. She eventually saves their lives from a smoke ghost that is Roaring Dan's lingering spirit. The thing she really wanted from the crate was the other half of the Philosopher's Stone. She wants mortality back, mostly for Nick. At the warehouse, Steve and Claudia get an intruder alert. Steve assumes it's Nick. Claudia defends him. Then she sees Marcus Diamond, the man she killed, walking through the bronze sector and saying he bronzed Steve. She runs. She finds bronzed Steve. She goes to debronze him, and Marcus walks up behind her and turns into Nick. Nick was always the infiltrator. Charlotte was the front. Nick uses Franz Mesmer's magnets on Claudia to confuse her and Tesla's her, and unbronzes someone else out of the bronze sector, someone named Paracelsus, a 16th century alchemist, the real founder of the warehouse's bronzing process. Paracelsus bronzes Claudia and walks out. Down at Roaring Dan's treasure site in upstate New York, Pete finally forces the truth out of Myka about her cancer. He just hugs her. He does not freak out. Paracelsus and Nick flee to Istanbul, the monastery of Staudios, the alchemist's original laboratory from the 1500s. He plans to recreate the ritual that made the Sutton family immortal, this time to strip the immortality back out and restore the family's mortality. The team chases through Luxembourg, Istanbul, underground chambers. Sutton betrays the team to steal crown jewels mid-chase. Charlotte shoots him dead so he'll stand still. He gets back up, Meanwhile, Claudia, bronzed with an unstable Steely, is slowly disintegrating. Steve runs the stabilizer. Artie flies out to Joshua for emergency DNA. He doesn't come back with Joshua's DNA. He comes back with a blood sample from someone else, and he lies to Claudia about whose it is. The alchemist runs the ritual, and the family breathes the fumes, having no other choice. Then he pulls a gun on Nick for revenge, and Charlotte takes the bullet and dies. Nick and Sutton are mortal now. The team extracts the Steely. The monastery collapses. Back at the warehouse, one more mask comes off. To open the Regent's redacted Paracelsus files, they summon the Keeper, a living repository of every warehouse memory. It's Abigail. She apologizes to Mrs. Frederick for the deception. Meanwhile, Mrs. Frederick is falling apart. Her mind is unraveling. Warehouse 13 has two caretakers trying to coexist now. Her and Paracelsus, who was the caretaker of Warehouse 9 when he was bronzed 500 years ago. Two caretakers cannot share one warehouse. One of them is going to win. Pete and Myka chase Paracelsus through San Francisco hospitals, where he has been curing terminal cancer patients as a stepping stone. The alchemist needs petrified wood to complete his return to full power. The Coit Tower in San Francisco has a beam in it from eastern Turkey. At the Coit Tower, Artie fires caretaker ribbon energy through the Farnsworth to cut Paracelsus's link to the warehouse. Paracelsus deflects the blast into Myka, then inhales the fumes from his own reconstituted Philosopher's Stone. He is immortal again. Every patient he cured dies at that moment because the life he used to heal them was temporary. They catch him anyway. Pete brings him back to the warehouse. They try to bronze him in the chamber. It does not work, because the immortal invented bronze and built himself immune to it. They put him in a suspension chamber instead. The alchemist looks into Myka's eyes. He tells Pete he can cure her cancer. He needs two specific artifacts and a scalpel. The downside is minimal. Meanwhile, Artie takes Claudia out onto the catwalk and tells her the truth about the blood sample. It didn't come from Joshua. It came from Claire, Claudia's older sister. Claire was supposed to have died in the family car accident. Claire is alive. Claire has been alive the whole time. Artie has been hiding her from Claudia since before Claudia walked into the warehouse. Because Claire is extremely dangerous, Pete goes to Paracelsus. He agrees to let the alchemist out to perform the procedure on Myka, on the condition that he takes the Philosopher's Stone first and becomes mortal again. The immortal agrees. The moment the fumes of the stone hit his body inside the warehouse, Paracelsus gladly explains the mechanism. Used this close to the El Dunari, the warehouse's central nervous system, the stone amplifies a caretaker's link to the building. His mind takes full control. The warehouse is his. Mrs. Frederick is dying. Claudia uses the caretakership ribbon to unhook her. Paracelsus throws Pete across the warehouse with a thought. Lightning strikes down in the aisles. The umbilicus collapses. Pete, Artie, Steve, and Mrs. Frederick run for the emergency exit. Myka isn't with them. She's miles away at the medical center, unconscious, headed into surgery. Claudia stops. She says the warehouse is telling her to stay. She turns and walks alone into the aisle toward the alchemist. Artie tries to stop her, and she tells him he has made enough decisions for her. Pete promises her he will stop him. They make it out. The immortal activates the defense shield. The warehouse is now sealed with him and Claudia inside, and he is the god of the building. End of Season 4. Claudia stands alone inside the warehouse facing a 500-year-old man who just made himself god of the building. They throw artifacts at each other. Every strike gets countered. Until the alchemist remembers that if she is part of the warehouse now, so is he, and he can possess her. He walks her to the office like a puppet. He has her pull up files on Carl Schwarzschild. He is going to combine 3 artifacts with Helena G. Wells's time machine and physically jump backward through time to 1541. Outside the force field, the team scrambles. Pete meets Myka at the hospital. The ovarian cancer turned out to be a benign cyst. She is fine. She walks out of the hospital and drives straight to the observatory, swings the telescope away from Alpha Centauri, the star system feeding the force field, and walks through the barrier. It's still shimmering. It just can't stop anyone now. All glow, no wall. Artie splits the team. He and Myka break the alchemist's connection to the warehouse by reigniting the Eldunari alcoves with Sumerian mirrors. The mirrors are a flame bounce. Miscalibrate them, and you incinerate. They calibrate them. The immortal loses his link to Claudia. She runs, but Paracelsus has already built his time machine. Pete fires the arrow of Achilles at him, misses. The alchemist jumps into 1541 and disappears. The warehouse around them ripples and rewrites itself. It is now a high-tech dystopian fortress under his 500-year rule. The banners on the walls have his face on them. Science is everything. The team remains themselves because Artie handed them metal dining forks from Versailles that preserve timeline identity. Myka and Pete chase the alchemist back to 1541 through his own time machine, while Steve stays behind, cycling Jack LaLande's stationary bike to power the portal. In the past, they meet Lisa da Vinci, a warehouse agent and granddaughter of Leonardo. They chase him through 16th century Europe to the regent's dinner meeting at what is literally a 16th century Olive Garden. He tries to kill the regents with an elephant tusk that summons boa constrictors. Lisa whistles in a purple swamp hen that neutralizes the tusk and flies off with it. Paracelsus bolts. Pete hits the alchemist in the leg with his own scalpel, drags him to Warehouse 9's bronze sector, and bronzes him. Past and present resync. The warehouse is theirs again. Mrs. Frederick is caretaker again. And Myka works out why Pete had that scalpel. The deal with Paracelsus. Her life for his freedom. She tells him never to put her life before the world and the warehouse again, punches his shoulder, and walks off. But in the personnel quarters, the alternate timeline Benedict Valda, who survived the rewind because he stole one of the Versailles forks, quietly lets himself out. Claudia is locked in the warehouse, obsessed with the question of her sister Claire. Artie agrees to take her through his own memories, using the bronzed baby shoes from back in Season 3. They watch teenage Claire having a telekinetic breakdown in a high school classroom. They watch the music box. Francis Farmer's music box burned in the Donovan fireplace when Claudia was 7. The box is what did this to Claire. The box is also how Artie first met young Claudia, who could sense it was an artifact. Claudia becomes convinced her younger self destroyed the box and damned Claire. Artie's memories can't say, so she and Steve dive into Claire's memories instead. Claire tossed the box into the fire herself. Claudia isn't responsible for what happened to her sister. Claire fought through the pain to show her that. Meanwhile, Pete and Myka work a case in DC with 2 Secret Service agents they used to work with, Ted and Elise. Lobbyists and senators are drowning on dry land. The artifact is the hilt of Dreyfus's sword, wielded by a chief of staff named Diane Hewlett, who ruined a senator's life with lies and drove him to his death. The artifact kills people who lie. Ted and Elise turn out to be secretly married. Mrs. Frederick takes Myka aside and asks if she's thought about having children. Pete, overhearing, volunteers services as a father. The caretaker poofs out of the conversation. At the end, Pete tells Myka she is the most important person in his life. If she ever seriously considers a baby, he is there. She stares at him. He walks away without waiting for an answer. Season 5, Episode 3, A Fair to Remember. Pete and Steve work a Renaissance fair, where a horrible juggler named the Doofer is being magically helped by a lovesick dunk tank girl who used an artifact fortune deck on him, hoping to make her crush a knight. The cards say hero or death, a demon, a wizard, a runaway wagon, a human chess match. The doofer finally runs his sword through the demon at the joust, gets knighted, refuses the scripted princess, and picks the dunk tank girl. Meanwhile, Claudia sneaks into the Regent Chalet with Myka and does the thing Artie said not to do. She uses Bob Dylan's bus transfer and Alessandro Volta's biscuit barrel to pull the dark energy out of Claire. It works. Claire wakes up. Claire is 30 years old and thinks she's 15. Claudia has to explain an iPad, an Xbox, the 15 missed years, and that their parents died in the crash Claire caused. Claire takes it hard. They spend one afternoon together at the coffee house where Claudia plays. They sing When I Grow Up by Garbage together. It's a good day, but the dark energy didn't disappear. It went into Myka. At the warehouse, loading the new dark vault, she starts levitating artifacts and swirling the aisles into a tornado. Artie tries a tranquilizer dart. It only makes her angrier, and the levitation gets worse. He finally drops her with an artifact while Claudia and Claire run distraction, but he can't neutralize the music box energy without a living host to transfer it back to. Claire volunteers. She's had her one good day. She tells Claudia she loves her, and she's counting on her to fix this someday. They transfer the energy back into Claire. They put her back in the coma. Claire sings the garbage song one more time, while Claudia cries and sings along. Artie takes Claudia back to the warehouse and shows her the 15 years of notes he has been keeping trying to figure out a cure. He apologizes for not telling her. Claudia hugs him. He refuses the hug. He says it will make him cry. Myka hugs him instead. He cries anyway. Season 5, Episode 4, Savage Seduction. Pete's ex-girlfriend Kelly shows up at the bed and breakfast pregnant with someone else's baby. Her grandmother got sucked into a Spanish telenovela called Savage Seduction through a prop brooch the show mailed her. Cheap junk, until Nana's obsession made it an artifact. Kelly jumps into the TV trying to save Nana. Myka follows. Then Artie and Pete jump in. Everyone becomes their telenovela counterpart. Kelly is Nana's granddaughter Carmen. Myka is the maid Maribel. Artie is the long-lost military colonel Raphael. Pete is the CEO CEO Armando, engaged to Carmen while declaring his undying love to Maribel behind her back. They hold on to Harvey Korman's cufflinks to flicker back and forth between their real selves and their character selves. Pete blows the plot open. He exposes Alicia's affair, tells Kelly she isn't Raphael's daughter, and knocks out both women before they can poison Nana. Artie neutralizes the brooch just in time. They go home. Meanwhile, Claudia and Steve catch a frat at Dakota University using Edna St. Vincent Millay's two-ended candle to duplicate themselves into a drunk party version and a sober study version so they can party all night and get A's all day. Steve gets doubled. One of him is extremely gay. One of him is extremely butch. Claudia eventually merges them back. When they get home, Claire is gone. Season 5/Episode 5, Kanku Shisi. Alternate timeline. Valda took Claire. He had been hiding in the personnel quarters archive since the time rewind. His Versailles fork preserved him. His plan is to turn Claire into a puppet caretaker, use Hiram Abiff's mall to relocate Warehouse 13 to Beijing, and run it as his own militarized state. He's been testing artifacts as weapons for terrorist buyers. He electrocutes Regent Keeler with a jade elephant. He freezes Artie with an Inuksuk. He uses Chuck Yeager's sonic boom record on a park of civilians. Valda holds the mall's handle. The hammer is hidden at the Green Dragon Tavern in Boston, birthplace of the host country. His buyer plants the Mason Square in Beijing. Meanwhile, Steve figures out that Pete has been acting weird around Myka for an episode and a half. He presses Pete. He finally admits it. He's in love with her. He asks if he's lying. Steve gasps in shock and says no. Pete, Myka, and Claudia chase the old man to the Green Dragon Tavern in Boston, then portal to the Beijing Stadium. He has already begun the relocation. The warehouse is phasing into a new building in China. Claire, controlled through the lens strapped to her face, pins the team to the wall. Valda welcomes them to Kanku Shisi, Warehouse 14. Claudia starts singing When I Grow Up Again. Claire breaks his control, so Valda decides to take the caretakership himself. Claudia reverses the lens. Claire pours her rage into him, and Pete neutralizes the Versailles fork, the only thing holding him in this timeline. He discorporates in mid-strike. Claire is free, the warehouse stays, and the rage is gone, transferred into Valda as he vanished. At the bed and breakfast, Claudia assures her she's cured. In the basement, Artie and Steve save the warehouse using a rope tied to the altar housing the compass. Artie argues they are the true heroes. Steve says maybe the people in China did something. They both say nah. They celebrate. But Mrs. Frederick, watching the compass still pulse faintly in its vault, knows it isn't over. The old man triggered something that even she may not be able to reverse. The warehouse is going to move. It just hasn't moved yet. Season 5, Episode 6, Endless. A woman runs screaming through the fog of London from Jack the Ripper. She reaches a dead end, turns, pulls Harriet Tubman's thimble off her finger, and reveals herself as Helena G. Wells, a new Warehouse 12 agent in her first month on the job. She Tesla's Jack. Her mentor Kataranga catches up and compliments her on her first month. He tells her that she is helping the world, and that warehouses move. They always move. When England's power wanes, another country will host the next one, the present. The team watches that recording back, and Myka notes that Helena is dating a woman named Giselle. They're gathered around the round table that inspired King Arthur's Round Table. Mrs. Frederick explains that the warehouse is moving to China. The move is permanent. The move is inevitable. Valda set the compass spinning, and it cannot be unwound. She has called them there to add their defining memories to the table, so the next agents in the next country will know what it was to work here. Pete loses it. He yells. Claudia calms him down and volunteers to go first. Claudia's memory is the day Pete accidentally triggered the marquee from the Strand Theater and filled the aisles with thousands of tap-dancing showgirls. They had to recharge the marquee by performing a show-stopping dance number. Claudia wore the sequined outfit. Claudia finished the number. The lights burst. The showgirls vanished. Watching it back, the team realizes that was the day Claudia realized she wanted to be an agent, not a caretaker. She never told Artie. Artie says it's fine. Artie says she has to live her own life. Artie's memory is a case with a nervous young assistant named Scott Moore at an abandoned 1940s officers club that existed for one night every year. A pregnant woman named Laura trapped her new husband Jonah in the time bubble rather than lose him to the war. Scott talks Jonah into meeting his baby. The case closes. Scott hugs Artie. Scott is Artie's son. Claudia yanks Artie's hand off the table. Artie explains that back when he was arrested for treason, he was seeing someone. She got pregnant. She never told him. By the time he found out, Scott was a grown man. Agents aren't allowed to have a one. Artie had to fight the regents to change the policy. They did. Scott lives in San Diego. They see each other once a year. Claudia is furious he didn't tell her. Artie says he's happy. He says he has the best of both worlds. worlds. He tells her she has to fight for her happiness the same way. She's angry. She also understands. Myka's memory is a case where a five-tailed fox statue turned a room full of suburban women, every one of them carrying a dark secret, into ninja cat burglars, and she and Pete took down all five. In the final frame, while Pete isn't looking, she softly smiles at him. Steve sees the frame and says, "Hello, what is this?" She denies it. She denies it again. She looks at the frame and admits it out loud. She is in love with Pete. Mrs. Frederick doesn't use the table. She shows her memories privately, just to Steve. Lena's first day, quietly saying she will die there someday, and that it's all right. A memory of Mr. Frederick. When Pete walks in, Steve is crying. Steve's memory is the day Helena shrank the team down and sent them into Artie's chest to disarm a clock artifact before it killed him. Claudia rode inside the Nautilus 3 submarine. Steve went outside it in a diving suit, drifting through the valve and into the beating heart alone to make the shot. He made it. Claudia, from inside the sub, asked if he felt better about belonging. Steve said yes, but not because of the shot. Because he had been inside a beating human heart, and it was indescribable. Claudia says he found peace. Steve says no. The warehouse gave it to him. There's a difference. Artie walks down a warehouse aisle alone, screams at the ceiling, says he has dedicated his entire life to this building, lost friends and family, killed the people he loved most, and he's never gotten so much as a thank you. A wind kicks up. An apple rolls down the aisle from nowhere and stops at his feet. He picks it up. He says, "You're welcome." Myka finds Pete trying to shift the compass, planning to throw it in the furnace to stop the move. He starts explaining. She tells him to shut up. She kisses him. Pete, 3 seconds later, checks her for a fever. He asks if she's under the control of a nympho artifact. She tells him it's not where he is that defines him, it's the decisions he makes. He says he doesn't want to lose the warehouse or her. She says he can't lose her because she loves him. They kiss again. They laugh. She punches him in the arm. He says that after 5 years of being punched by her, the punching has become extremely effective at other things. She says she knows. Pete goes to the round table last. He puts his hand in the center. The table plays back every case he's ever worked. Every punch, every terrible joke, every moment with Myka, every quiet conversation with Artie. It keeps playing and playing. The others come in and watch. Myka asks Mrs. Frederick why the table is showing all of his memories instead of one. The caretaker tells Pete to explain. He says his defining moment isn't a case. It's every minute he got to spend with these people. He was afraid he would go back to the man he was before she showed up in his apartment 5 years ago, and he didn't. Mrs. Frederick, who in 5 seasons and 64 episodes has never laughed, laughs out loud. Artie stares at her in genuine shock. She tells them she is a woman of infinite surprises. An artifact ping alert goes off. The team leaves to work the case, because there are still cases. On the way out, he stops at the door and asks Mrs. Frederick if this is really over. She tells him that particular wonder is never over. She'll see him tomorrow. He kisses her on the cheek. He runs to catch up with Myka. 50 years pass. 3 young agents stand in a warehouse office somewhere, arguing about how impossible it is that the warehouse might move countries this year. An older woman walks in, Miss Donovan. She tells them that warehouses have been threatening to move for as long as she can remember. She tells them to get back to work. They go. Miss Donovan walks alone to the round table. She puts her hand in the center. She watches Pete hug Mrs. Frederick. She watches Artie cry. She watches Steve inside a human heart. She watches Myka smile at Pete from across a kitchen. She watches Claire singing. She watches Lena at the bed and breakfast. She watches all of them, every one of them, alive. The image freezes on Pete at the door, saying goodbye to Mrs. Frederick one more time. End of Warehouse 13. The thing the show was always actually about, under the artifacts and the campfires and the bronze, was a handful of people who found each other in a sealed building in South Dakota and decided to stay. The warehouse never mattered. The warehouse was just a pretext. What mattered was the table they sat around at the end of every case, in a bed and breakfast off a highway, eating something Lena cooked, and the empty chair they never stopped setting a place for. Miss Donovan closes the table. She goes back to work. Somewhere a ferret appears in a kettle. Somewhere Harry Houdini's wallet sits quietly on a shelf. Somewhere in the aisles of a building nobody's ever allowed to admit exists, a rugby ball arcs up through the roof on a long, slow trajectory. It always comes back, and Pete was right about one thing at the end. He was afraid the warehouse would give him back to the version of himself he used to be. It didn't. It made him someone else. It made all of them someone else. The warehouse never changed. They did. If this was the goodbye Warehouse 13 never got, do me one favor. Hit subscribe. That's how this channel keeps bringing canceled shows the send-off the network refused to give them. And the next one's already on screen. Another show that ended without permission. Another handful of people in a building nobody knew existed, keeping the world from falling apart, while nobody said thank you. Click it. I'll meet you there.